Hey guys, Justin Stewart here, one half of the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. If you're watching on video, I apologize for my background. Uh, have a regular life outside of podcasting, of course. Gotta put away some laundry. But that's besides the point. Got a chance to talk with Joe Brand, Pittsburgh Penguins play-by-play radio announcer. Talked all things hockey, Penguins vibes, getting the broadcasting, baseball of all sports, and immersing himself in Pittsburgh culture. Hope you enjoy the video if you're watching on YouTube, audio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. Always appreciate people listening. Any feedback, as long as it's constructive and not disrespectful, I'm open to, whether it's videos, editing styles, whatsoever. Always down for that. Iron Eagle, looking like Iron Eagle might be our next guest for a future podcast appearance. Hopefully, we can get that set up before the football season starts because we all know Ian is a very busy man from September to about May with basketball, March Madness, NFL, of course. So, hope you guys tune in, sit back, enjoy this interview with Joe Brand, Penguins radio announcer, and yeah, enjoy the show. So growing up, was broadcasting something that was always on your mind, or did you have something else as far as career aspirations go?
No, this was it. This was it. This has been it since I was 10. I grew up a huge baseball fan. I would watch baseball every day and I loved it, but I was not a good athlete at all. So I wanted to find a way to be involved with the game every single day. And then the Blackhawks got good in high school, and all of a sudden I just started watching hockey every day because the Hawks were good and it was fun and it was something different. They were, winning Stanley Cups all the way through college, so it was just a cool time to be in Chicago and be a big sports fan. I was a little too young to really experience the Bulls, so I always feel like the Blackhawks were the thing I got to really cherish at that time of my life. But the cool thing about it was like the Penguins were always kind of my Eastern Conference team because they had, similar dynasties going on. They had similar Hall of Fame players. It's cooler now how Crosby, Malkin, and Letang are all still together. But they always kind of matched up. We never got that Stanley Cup final that I think everyone would have wanted to see. But it was a cool time for both organizations, both fan bases, and it's really fun to be on this side of it now too. So yeah, I always wanted to do broadcasting. I went into baseball first out of college. I worked in the minors for about 10 years. I was freelancing football, basketball, soccer, swimming, tennis, doing all that I could, along with working at WGN Radio in Chicago, which had the Blackhawks. So that's how I got my foot in the door producing those games. But hockey was actually the last sport I called. I was doing everything else before, and I never had time to call any hockey just because I was producing it. So that was kind of my fill-in for that sport. And then when I finally got around to getting some hockey reps, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I felt pretty confident in it. And, it turned into filling in on the Hawks minor league broadcast to filling in on the Hawks broadcast to throwing my hat in the ring for this job, and I got it, and it's been a dream come true ever since.
Yeah, so I was going over your resume. I know baseball was a big part of your broadcasting journey this far. Was hockey like always the dead set sport you wanted to call, or was baseball like another consideration, or maybe even another sport?
No, honestly, I mean, baseball is what I got into the business for.
Okay.
It's still the sport I know the most. I understand the most. There are a lot of times I feel behind the eight ball with hockey just because I'm still learning a lot as it goes on. I mean, like I said, I started watching it in high school, and I know now that doesn't seem like, oh, I got to it late, but at the time it did because the Hawks were good, and I'm like just watching the sport on a consistent basis at that time. Um, and also it was easier to find baseball jobs out of college. There's so many minor league teams out there. It's during the summer. It's what I knew I wanted to do. There were a lot of teams around my hometown too. That was a big thing. I got an internship with a minor league team that was 10 minutes away from my parents' house, so that worked out great for me. And then I just kind of climbed up the ladder in baseball because I ended up getting another job as a number one somewhere in Michigan, and then the following year, an affiliated team in the Chicagoland area hired me as a number two. I then became the number one there, and I was there for a while in Kane County. It's a big reason why I'm at where I am today, even though it's a different sport. It's just I feel like you gotta get the experience calling games if you want to do this, no matter the sport. So yeah, I mean, I was throwing all my eggs in baseball's basket for the longest time, just because it's what I got into the business for. It's what I wanted to do. I always watched hockey and loved hockey, and again worked behind the scenes on it. And then it just the opportunities kind of kept falling in my lap. I mean, of course I like to give myself credit for how I got there, but I went from producing the Blackhawks games to reporting on them. And then I started hosting a podcast for the Hawks. And then I filled in on some pre and post for the White Sox when we had the White Sox WGN radio. And then the Blackhawks pre and post job opened up a year later. I had the experience. They knew I covered the team. They knew I could handle the job, so I got it. And then from then on out, I'm like, hey, I want to do play-by-play, but I have no hockey play-by-play. And there was an opportunity to fill in on the minor league side, so I did it. It was a challenge. It was tough. I actually started doing it in my condo. I had a back room that I turned into a studio with the soundproofing and everything, and I would play the rebroadcast of the game with just the on ice effects and call it just to practice it because I'd never done it, and it was tough. It was really challenging, and I felt kind of over my skis, but I just forced myself to keep doing it so that I could gain the confidence to do it in real time in real life, and then I did. I started doing some minor league games, and I did about nine. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I feel confident in my call now. And a little bit later, there was an opportunity to fill in with the Hawks, and I did it. I felt like I did pretty well. They had me do some more. And then when the Penguins job opened up, my resume just kind of fit the description perfectly because I had shown I could work at the NHL level, but I just hadn't been there on a consistent basis yet. And I sent my tape, went through the interview process, and everything just kind of worked out.
So, maybe like talk to me a little bit more about the Penguins radio job. So that opens up, I believe, in 2024. What was the process like, just applying for it and then doing the interviews and maybe doing like practice games to prepare yourself for that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, these interviews and jobs are tricky because, they open up so seldomly, and I'm sure hundreds of people apply for it, ranging from no experience at all to very qualified for the job. And that's what I try to tell people who are trying to crack into the business is, it's tough. It's a subjective business. It's not always um, who deserves it the most or who is most qualified. It's just, what's on their mind. What are they looking for at that point in time? Um, so, you throw your hat in the ring, you apply, you reach out to some people that possibly know who is making the hire just to be like, hey, what do you know about this? How do I help my chances at this? Every organization's different. Every interview process is different. I mean, mine, there was a mock broadcast element to it, which truthfully I loved because it was something I could actually prepare for. It was the only part of the interview that wasn't just like, let's win the personality contest. It was something I could work at and study. And yeah, we did a rebroad. I've told this story before. It was a rebroadcast of the Penguins Red Wings third period and overtime. And they told me about it. They told me what game it was going to be like 2 days in advance. So they didn't want to like give it to you a month in advance or anything like that. Um, but I've heard people go through this process before, and I've heard how they don't pre-watch the game. They don't want to pre-watch because they want to come off as natural and authentic. And I like that philosophy. So I've rewatched the previous two Penguins and Red Wings games to like get a better feel for the players, their numbers, their characteristics, what they did in the season series earlier. And then my plan was to watch the first two periods of that game and then go into the interview to call the third. During all of this, I accidentally saw the final score of the game. So I was a little frustrated, but it's like whatever, what can you do? But it's just like okay, I'll go into the third period. I know how many goals are scored. I know who wins in overtime. So third period goes pretty well. Overtime comes. I'm waiting for the Penguins to lose. I'm waiting for the Red Wings to score. I'm just waiting for it to happen. And then all of a sudden, Erik Karlsson sends a bomb from the blue line and the Penguins score and they win. And all I make the call, but all I can think about is they're going to overturn this? Like when does this get completely 180'd? And it goes black and I'm like, that's it? That's it. I thought they were gonna like quiz me on a rule that I might not know or something like that. And I misread the score when I did all that prep. So I like to think that that worked out in my favor because it was a very authentic, natural call and being surprised and excited that the Penguins won. And then looking back on it, it's like, of course they're gonna put in a Penguins overtime winner. Why would they put in Penguins overtime loss? They want to
Right.
hear how I sound with an overtime loss. You can listen to the Flyers elimination game from this past postseason series to hear the exact opposite of that. But yeah, so that was my process. And again, I was most grateful for the mock broadcast part of it because I just thought it helped me prepare. It helped me feel a little bit more at ease. And again, it was something I could work towards, I could study, I could practice on.
So when you prepare for games, you've done, studio hosting, analyst, play-by-play, obviously. As far as doing the broadcasting side of things on radio or TV, your prep sheet, like what is like, I know NHL is kind of more fluid. There's multiple teams in a week, there's multiple games. Um, how far in advance do you prepare for like the next opponent as far as like who's on the team, trends with the Penguins, whether they're playing well or not? Like how do you like condense all that into like a cohesive like note sheet? Like what is your method for preparing for a broadcast?
Organization is huge and it's key because it's just easier to navigate previous teams and notes and stats and factoids. So I truly just have a folder on my desktop. They're all Word documents and there's a game sheet for each team. I mean, my first year I had none, and then eventually I had all the other 31 teams. But the more you see teams, the better the game sheet gets because I just know more. I know more about the players. I know more about the team. And it's an evolving thing. I mean, if I looked at my game sheet from my very first game to right now, they look totally different because you start to learn what you use, what you don't use. I tell people all the time that any sort of chart, game sheet, prep sheet, whatever, it should be a cheat sheet. It shouldn't be gospel. You should go in there like it's an open book test where all the info is up here, but when you need to locate or navigate something, you can do it immediately. So my philosophy is I know the Penguins have the third best power play in the NHL. Do I have the percentage memorized? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But if I don't, I know exactly where to find it. And I know exactly how many power play goals they've scored in their last 10 tries. But that's all bullet pointed. That's all listed on the sheet. Because in my mind, the Penguins are good in the power play is the most important thing. I can say that freely. I can say that with validity. And I don't need to get into the nitty-gritty, into the numbers right away because I think it sticks in the listener's mind a little bit better when you just give them the meat and the potatoes and then add the gravy, add the seasoning later on, when it's a little bit less important. So it's not a finished product. I think, I truly I've enjoyed prepping for games more now that I've kind of not mastered it. I don't want to say that it's not mastered, but I've figured out a better way to prepare it. Before I was just like cramming for a test. I was trying to put in all this info that I possibly could into the game sheet so that, I had every bit of info. But if you don't remember what you write and you don't remember what's on there, it's not gonna help you. It's not gonna be beneficial. So I tell people that too. Like no one cares how beautiful your prep sheet is, and because no one sees it. No one sees it but you. All they see is the finished product of you on the air. So you want to make sure your prep sheet puts you in the best possible position to call the game. And I used to get bent out of shape when something was wrong or it was color coded wrong, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. And there's a following game the next day. So or there's another game coming up. So you just kind of have to move on. But I think that's the biggest thing is that it's ever changing. It's a fluid process and it's okay to tweak and improve and change it just to get better at it.
So you've done television, you've done radio. As far as just like your approach to calling a game, what are some differences between doing television and radio play-by-play?
They're very different, and in my mind, they're incredibly different. And I really changed my approach with both of them, and maybe a little bit too much. But I mean, in my mind, you like everyone says, you paint the picture on radio. You try to be as descriptive as possible, but you try to be productively descriptive. I feel like anytime you describe something the color of a jersey, the capacity of the crowd. It's got to be done with intention. It's got to be said at the right time. It has to hold some meaning, hold some context. And then TV, you're playing traffic cop. You got a producer in your ear. You've got an engineer in your ear. You've got a stats guy in your ear. You've got your color guy in your ear. On radio, you're the pilot. You're orchestrating the whole thing. You're in charge. But when you do TV, you're kind of just trying to make the whole product move freely and slowly, not slowly, freely and fluidly. Um, but you're also in charge. You're the one that makes it a good product or not. Or I should say one of the most important components of making it a solid product. Um, I've only done a few games on TV. I filled in on like three. Um, and that's been a challenge to realize, okay, this maybe was like my first TV game. I felt like I didn't talk at all, but I didn't want to over talk. So I think I overcompensated for it by not talking, which then made it a boring, sad broadcast. So the next time I filled in, I was very mindful of that. Like it's okay to call the action. It's still a game. It's still play by play. But I truly feel like the best play-by-play broadcasters say what's going on TV without saying exactly what's going on. Like they just have a perfect way of complementing it and adding to it. And I think that takes a long time. Like they're very skilled, but they're also very experienced. So that's how they get to that level. Um, so I probably get in my own head a little bit too much about that than I should. Because the job requirements for the different roles are different, but maybe they shouldn't be as poetically different as I try to drum them up to be.
No, that's fair. I was gonna say, just going back to the whole Chicago aspect of things. I don't like to use the word idol a lot when you're talking about athletes and maybe broadcasters, but is there someone, it's a two-pronged question. The first one is there someone, an athlete in Chicago or just, nationally that you grew up watching that you had like respect for, their craft, like how they played, how they conducted themselves? And then two, on the broadcasting side, did you have anyone maybe in hockey or just nationally with any sport that you had a deep respect for as a broadcaster?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I truly think that Chicago has some of the best play-by-play guys, though, and I think they have had for a while. But it's why I fell in love with the industry. It's why I wanted to do what I'm doing. Um, but I mean, I grew up watching Pat Foley on TV and listening to John Weideman on radio, and I really got to learn under John Weideman, which was huge for me because he is so pinpoint accurate on his calls on the radio. Just never misses anything and does a great job of if anything slightly gets missed, he goes back and gets it. If if you are not at the game and you're listening to John Weideman, you are catching every bit of info that you possibly can. to make you feel like you were there. And I think that's the ultimate compliment because that's what I want to be. I want to be the bridge from the game to the fans that can't be there. Aside from hockey, I mean, again, I grew up watching a lot of baseball, so I grew up watching Hawk Harrelson and Chip Carey, who, were big personalities, Hawk especially, but Chip also being the grandson of Harry Carey, which was the biggest personality behind a microphone in Chicago. Still people still talk about him like he's the mayor. Pat Hughes on radio, just, the voice of my summers. But Jeff Joniak, who does football for the Bears on the radio, has turned to be a great mentor of mine and friend of mine. He just does such a great job of raising the tenacity of his voice when the play starts to increase and when the play starts to get more intense and important, and you could be speaking a different language, but you know that the Bears are about to score because of how fierce his voice gets, and his excitement level just nails it on the head every single time. So I think that's just such a great trait to have that you can only gain through the experience. So yeah, again, I'm very biased. Outside of Chicago, I mean, obviously Mike Lang is a huge reason why the radio listenership here is so profound, and that is incredible. Like I don't know another city that's got that. And that's because of who Mike Lang was, not just as a broadcaster, but as a person. And I never met the man. We texted a little bit before he unfortunately passed, but I feel like to my selfish benefit, that leaves him as a larger than life, lore that I never, because so many Penguins fans never got to meet him. And, I feel like I'm part of that group now, and I feel his presence every single day. You just can't not feel his presence with how many people tune in on the radio, how many people still say his sayings and everything. And that's why, when people ask, "Oh, what's your goal call? What's your, Mike Langism?" It's like I'm not Mike Lang, and I don't want to be Mike Lang because that's not fair to the Penguins fans to try and be Mike Lang. Like that would be a disservice to them. It'd be insulting to him. He is just on his own pedestal because he was that great that it's not fair to the Penguins fans to, try and recreate that because it would just be insulting. Um, Trying to think of some other broadcasters I like. I mean, I'm kind of in a baseball mode right now with it being summer and I have the package, so I just bounce around games. Joe Davis is just so good. And kind of going
Yeah.
back to what I was saying about television broadcasters, just knowing the right way to complement a broadcast, I think he is just the highest standard that's ever been. Aaron Goldsmith is really good
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So there's just a few. I mean, obviously Benetti is there, Boog Sciambi, who's been a great help to me too. Again, they just know how to portray the right moments the right way at the right time, and also the versatility of doing it on radio. I always appreciate Boog and Benetti, two totally great examples of that. I mean, any sport, any medium, they nail it. So yeah, there's so many. I know I'm leaving other guys out. Len Casper's been a huge help to me and just another great mentor. Player wise, I know I kind of beat around the bush with that question, but it's tough for
That's
me.
all right. That's all
I
right.
just, I grew up a sports fan, so I went to Ryan Sandberg's Hall of Fame induction. That was a
Nice.
big part of my baseball upbringing. I loved his speech. Cool side note, no one probably will know this reference, but Barry Rosner, who was a writer in Chicago for the Daily Herald, wrote that speech for Ryan Sandberg. And I fell in love with it when I first heard it. And once I learned Barry Rosner wrote it, I ended up meeting him one day. Actually, had a few cocktails with him at the bar,
Hmm.
and we talked about it, and it was incredible. It'd be like if you had your favorite book ever and you got to talk to the author about it. It was so cool. He talks about, wearing the jersey for the name on the front, not the name on the back. Rounding the bases, going back into the dugout, not looking for the little red light in the dugout. And I talked to him about that. He's like, "Yeah, I was at a stoplight and there was a red light sitting there in the fog." And that's what, it was just so cool to hear the backstory of all that. Um, I can't bring up athletes and how they present themselves every single day, though, without mentioning Sidney Crosby, because it's just incredible. You know of how great of a player and a person he is being outside of Pittsburgh and outside of hockey, and then you see how he operates on a day-to-day basis, and you hear what other people have to say about him, and it truly is incredible how he's almost the perfect human. And I would think he's the perfect human, but he would never say anyone is perfect. But the dude has never done anything wrong, and just always knows the right thing to say around people, fans, other teammates, athletes, coaches. It's incredible, and it truly. I have felt this with the Penguins. It raises everyone's standard. Everyone, if Sid can do this, if Sid can tolerate this, if Sid can do this with a smile on his face, why can't everyone? And I'm incredibly lucky to have just experienced that. Um, it really makes sense though why the Penguins are the organization that they are. Just a very stoic franchise. Like, of course, Sidney Crosby is a Pittsburgh Penguin because of who he is and who this organization has brought in the past. So it's really cool to be a small part of that. I mean, and in an observation way, I mean, just to witness it.
So I do want to like hit on some baseball stuff since you're very passionate about it. So obviously the White Sox in '05 they break their curse. Obviously the Cubs in 2016 broke their curse. Probably more immersed in the 2016 World Series though, but just like watching as a fan, like what was that experience like? They were one of the best teams that year in 2016. Um, Postseason was quite the thrilling experience, especially the World Series, Game 7, coming back down 3-1. Just like from the vibe of Chicago, and just for you personally, what was all that experience like? The joy and obviously the stress that came with that.
Yeah, stress is a good word. It's funny because, growing up such a big baseball fan and so passionate, good chunk of my childhood was knowing that the Cubs and the Sox had the two longest World Series droughts in Major League history, and then the Cubs in just sports history. Actually, the Sox might have had it at that time too, because a lot of people forget that their drought was longer than the Red Sox. It was 88 years. So in a way, like how I just said, I was too young for the Bulls. I mean, my first sports memory was '98 Bulls winning the championship, hearing horns honking outside, and my dad's like, "Yeah, the Bulls just won that." Like that's my first sports memory. But being a Chicagoan, the only team I haven't seen win a championship is the Bears, which is funny because people still talk about the '85 Bears like they were last year's team. That's a whole nother story. But so again, it's been a cool journey for me as a sports fan from Chicago because I got to see the Sox and their drought. I got to see the Cubs and their drought, and that's something I thought I would never see. And just on a personal standpoint, I watched the White Sox win the World Series with my grandfather, who was a Sox fan. My family was completely split. My dad was a Cub fan. My mom was a Sox fan. Each side, Cubs, Sox. And yeah, people who aren't from Chicago might not realize like how down the line it is. It's literally a territorial thing. But I grew up on the South Side, so I can't really show many Cubs colors down there
No.
because yeah, it could be a rough childhood if you do. So I do resonate with White Sox fans a lot because I'm from the South Side. Again, it's that blue collar mentality. So looking back on it, it's cool that I got to experience both in that way. I was actually living in the city when the Cubs won. I was out of college. I was living downtown. We walked to Wrigley right after they won. My friends and I locked arms. It took us 45 minutes to get from uh, Clark to Waveland in a sea of people. And so that's really cool that I was there for that. Yeah, it was just it's funny. I think in my mind it's always like, oh, two championships. That's all I've seen as a baseball fan. But really, like, how lucky am I that I got to see both and experience both at such an impressionable age? And now working in sports, you kind of see the more business side of it, and you
Right.
start to see it in a different way. I'm not complaining about that. I love that. I love that part because I feel like I generated the passion as a kid, and now as a working adult, I get to use that passion in my everyday business life, if you will. So yeah, so I appreciate you asking that question because I think it helps give me a more positive perspective about the whole thing.
No, that's fair. And I remember you mentioned just a couple minutes ago about how you have the MLB package. Well, I also do too, and I was just curious. It's summertime, so you probably have a little bit more free time. Is there like any teams you watch in particular, or maybe a player that you have to turn on the TV? It's like, oh, that's a guy I want to watch like, every night, day in and day out.
Not so much a player. I mean, yeah, sure. If something's up with Otani, if something's going on, of course I'll throw that on. I already wax poetry about Joe Davis though, but I truly go off of what broadcasts I like the most, and the Dodgers are one of them, just because that's a team, that's a broadcast you can throw on, and Steven Nelson does a fantastic job as well. Another great guy in the business. Um, it's a game you can throw on, and it's just such great background noise because number one, Joe and Steven Nelson know how to chime in at the right time, let the game breathe, let the nat sound come in and out. And I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the next time you throw on a Dodgers game just in the background, it sounds like waves. It sounds like just ocean waves, just very natural and breathable and very just easy to listen to. It's very easy to throw it on in the background. I think that way with Boog and the Cubs too, with games at Wrigley. Again, I'm biased, so maybe that plays a role. Um, Aaron Goldsmith, like I said, who else do I like? I mean, there's a lot of them. Ironically, I can't catch the Pirates games because we're blacked out, and I'm still bootlegging my brother-in-law's cable from Chicago. So it's crazy because I can watch the Cubs and Sox, I can watch any other game, but I can't watch the Pirates. And I know how great Greg Brown is. I listen to Joe Block a ton on the radio, and they flip-flop too. So actually, I do watch him though. I watch him on the rebroadcast.
Right.
I'm a new dad, so a lot of times I'm just chilling in the living room with my daughter, and I'll just throw on the rebroadcast of the Pirates game. So it's funny because I never understood that, growing up. Like, why would I watch the rebroadcast of a game?
Right.
I already know the final score, but now, priorities are different, and I almost enjoy it more that way because it's almost like, oh, I can just throw it on, I can casually watch, I can pick things up. Um, but and also just being in this industry, I think it's important to match your fan base and appease your fan base and do a good job of understanding the team in real time, what's going on with the team right now. And I think Greg Brown and Joe Block do such a fantastic job with that. Um, Jack McMullen, who does Marlins radio, I really enjoy too. And again, that's what I love about the package because you can flip on the radio
Yeah,
or the
with
TV
TV. Yeah, right.
broadcast. I can't believe I forgot this too. Wayne Randazzo was one of my first bosses in the business and hired me as number two in Kane County. He's now the Angels TV guy, and he does Apple TV broadcasts, and he's just another person who's incredible at factoring in everything, the flow of the game, the natural sound, his expertise, his baseball knowledge, because he's just a history nut. And he has nailed so many big calls like the Albert Pujols 700th home run. He had a call earlier this year. Joe Adele robbed three homers in
Oh,
right
I remember
field.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yep.
so good. So yeah, no, I owe such a big part of my career to Wayne because I got to learn under him on a daily basis in the minors, and he ended up getting more opportunities in Chicago, so I was picking up more games, and that was huge for my career because I could learn from him under him for like a third of the games and then work on my craft when he wasn't there. Like that's I looking back on it, I can't believe I was that lucky to get that. So yeah, again, I know I'm missing out some other people, but I mean, the Mets broadcast speaks for itself. I'll catch the Yankees on. The Yankees have a lot of former Kane County Cougars with Jazz Chisholm and Jose Caballero and Paul Blackburn. So I'll throw them on from time to time. Red Sox as well. So yeah, I know I'm going on and on, but that is the case.
No, that's okay. I mean, I like hearing all that from you though. But I do have to follow up with that though. Have you had the chance to go to PNC Park in person, or is that something you're still trying to do?
Oh, I've been there probably 15 times. It's
Oh
a booth. Yeah, like
my.
I mean, I have a lot of free time in the summer. I mean, my daughter is real young right now. I can't wait till she gets a little bit older, and I'm just going to be like, "Yep, let's go to the game. We're going to the game. It's going to take us 15 minutes to get there, 20 to 25 out, and coming from Chicago, going to the ball game can be an all-day event sometimes.
Right.
So that's why I love the accessibility of it, and PNC is, in my mind, the most beautiful ballpark in the majors. I try to show it off to all my friends and family that come. Yeah, it's incredible. I can't get over it. I would go to a game every series if I could, really.
So we do have to get you into Steelers football though. That has to be the next. We all know like that's like the Penguins obviously Pirates. They all have passionate fan bases, but Steeler Nation that's quite
Listen,
large.
listen, man. I know, but I can't do it right now with Aaron Rodgers being the
Oh
quarterback.
yeah, I got you. I got you. Yep. That makes total sense.
I mean, it's
I don't blame
nothing
you.
personal. It's
Right.
like if you're dating my ex-girlfriend, I just no, sorry, I just can't. It's
Oh
just
boy.
so I next year I am super thrilled to root for the Steelers, even if McCarthy is still the head coach, who was a former Packer head coach. That's
Right,
that's where I
right.
probably draw the line though. But no, nothing but love for the Steelers fan base and their passion as well. I get it. I do. And yeah, just listen, man, the Bears are the only team I haven't seen win the championship. They're finally like seeming to be really good. So I'm not going to let this slip by just because I'm not living in Chicago right now. But one day they will be my AFC team, just not this year.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I have a couple more questions. I'll let you
Yeah.
go. Appreciate you hopping on that. But the first one is, can you take me back to your first broadcast or any like journalism, radio, anything like assignment? Maybe it was in high school, college. Can you take me back to that time and just like remembering like how you prepped for that and maybe some of the nerves or any uneasy feelings that came with that?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of them. I mean, I was definitely not confident in my craft for a while. I mean, I'm still not. Like, I'm still not perfectly confident. The experience definitely helps. In the back of my head, I know I'm capable of handling it. I know I'm capable of possibly nailing a very important call, but you don't know what you're going to say. So that uncertainty, that unknown is daunting and scary. But of course it is when you first get into the business. And yeah, prep was different back then just because again, I came from my school mentality of cramming for a test and trying to know everything. And I do wish I could go back and just tell myself, excuse me, um, like what are the three most important things about this game? Let's stick to that. Let's grab those points and just work from there. And anything else that you find along the way is great. And multiple people told me you end up using probably 30% of what you put down in your prep sheet. And that's okay because maybe you'll use it later, maybe you don't, but that's just how it goes. Adam Amin, another great
Yeah.
play-by-play guy, Chicago-based guy, another great mentor of mine. Um, Two things he said that I'll never forget. Let the game breathe. The play is the most important action. This is all the same part. Um, the action is the meat and potatoes. Everything else is the gravy. So don't slip up on the meat and potatoes. Don't slip up on what is most important, what people are tuned in for, no matter what level you're at. And that's great advice because even if you're in the minors working on your craft and you think nobody's listening but your mom and dad and best friend, there are people who are listening that want to know the game. And that's what you have to focus on first and foremost. The other thing he said was it's the best job in the world and the worst business in the world, which I truly agree with because it's subjective and it's unreliable and it's unstable, but it is the best job in the world. Um, so yeah, so I wish I would have taken more pressure off of myself when I was first getting into the business because it's supposed to be fun and you're not a finished product and you're literally there to learn and grow and work on your craft and experience it. So I think a lot of young broadcasters have that problem because they want to call the game, clip it, put it on social media, go viral, get a job. It's just not how it works. It's not. You gotta take each game as a learning opportunity as a growing process. Hold on to that tape, go back and listen to it, workshop some things, but don't call the game thinking this is going to be on your tape because then that's when you can kind of get yourself stuck in the mud.
And then lastly, you talk about versatility, but that's like the common theme. Like anyone I've ever interviewed in media, you mentioned the guys you look up to, like Joe Davis, Adam Amin, Boog Sciambi, Aaron Goldsmith, all those guys, and tons of others. They call multiple sports, throughout the year. So to me, like for you, how important is it as a broadcaster not only to be versatile in multiple sports, but as far as like learning maybe all aspects of broadcasting, not just on air, but like behind the scenes and prep work, maybe doing stuff on the camera and producing. Like how important is it to be like well versed in this industry?
This is going to be a bit of a stretch, but it's truly how I feel. I remember one time in science class learning about how farmers used to plant their crops, and then the following year they planted the same crops. And they learned after a summer or after a year planting a different crop in that same spot, and that made the soil richer, and it made the next type of crop grow better because it just had different nutrients and it just made the soil more valuable. So that's how I kind of feel about it. Both calling different sports and doing different aspects of the job. I was lucky at Illinois State University that they made us do all the behind the scenes things. Even if my major was broadcast journalism, I wanted to be on air. I wanted that to be my main focus. They still made me learn how to use the video camera, learn how to edit, learn how to produce, learn how to run the teleprompter, learn how to do everything. And then anyone who was on the video side had to do on air just to get some experience with it. And I thought that was so valuable for my career because starting out, there's not a lot of jobs for recent graduates that's, all right, you're on air. Some are, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with people that go down that path. But it made me more valuable for other places, especially being in a major market like Chicago. My first internship at WGN Radio, I was cutting up sound and putting it online. That's all I was doing. They didn't hire me because they thought I could be a broadcaster one day. It's just not how it works. You got to be a team player. You got to know the ins and outs. But that helped make me stay there. And I did my on-air work on the side. I moonlighted with that. So they knew where my passion was, what I wanted to do, and they knew my work ethic because of how I was able to handle all the other stuff. So that's what worked out for me because I mean, I had a lot of odd jobs and I would call games, produce, do all these things to get the experience, and then I would do odd jobs to make money. I drove Uber, I substitute taught for a while, I was a security guard, and then eventually all the broadcasting jobs overtook all the jobs I needed for money, and then now I'm where I'm at today. So that really worked out in my favor because of the versatility. And then in terms of doing other sports, yeah, I think it's just huge because it helps you learn rules, it helps you learn how to talk to different athletes, it teaches you how to I don't know, just understand the nature of it all a little bit more and a little bit better. And you come to realize that there's a lot of similarities. I mean, at least in the broadcasting world. Like, I don't think, many hockey players can play baseball, but I think many hockey broadcasters can call baseball, even though they think that they're two totally different sports, and they are. In the broadcasting world, that's what I love about them. Baseball is almost like a podcast with a game going on, and hockey is just like basketball on crack. But that's why I love it. Yeah, the versatility is so important, and also the way the industry is going now, you got to do everything. You got to do everything. You got to know how to do everything. Back when I was in college, it was TV, radio, or print. And now everything is multimedia. Everything is podcasting, blogs, video clips. I mean, there's not too many just true natural radio broadcasts anymore at any level. And I mean, now we're seeing major league teams and NHL teams simulcasting, and it's brutal and it's terrible. And it's just, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir and being biased, but I'll never understand it. I guess I understand it, but I don't think it's necessary. Um, but I'm grateful for my radio background and experience because I think it just teaches you the elementary nuts and bolts of the business and of the job. And then everything that comes after that, I'm glad I had that standard, that base to work from in the first place.
That's what's up. Joe Brand, Penguins Radio, play-by-play announcer. I appreciate you hopping on. This is really a lot of fun. Might have to do this again in the future. I know the season picks up in a couple months, so it'll be a little bit harder maybe next off season. I'd definitely love to have you back on with my partner. Very busy guy though, but he loves interviewing too. So I appreciate you hopping on though for real.
Hey, Justin, pleasure's all mine. This is a great convo. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.